as most of you know, morning everybody, my name's Duncan. I trade as LD Celebrant. And I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about myself, how I came to be a celebrant, and also a little bit about planning loved ones' funerals. A very uplifting morning. But I thought I'd just give you an insight into my world and around funerals in general. Okay, so hopefully you'll find it interesting and enlightening. That's the whole point. There we go. So the first question I get asked, or when I tell people, better press that twice, is when I say to people, oh, I'm Lauren Duncan, I'm a celebrant, they normally look at me fairly blankly. You're celibate? You're what? Who? What? Where? And I don't know if many of you have heard what this word is before meeting me. Did you know what a celebrant was? Some nodding no, some shaking their heads, some people do, yes. Okay, so the first thing I thought I'd start with is explaining exactly what a celebrant is. And this is what a celebrant is. There we go, the next one. And that's where it comes from. Yeah, that's where the word comes from. So what we do is we celebrate life's occasions. Okay, but we do come in various guises. So I thought I'd explain a little bit more about the different types of celebrant that you can choose from. So the first person is a religious person, so they can be counted as a celebrant. So that's your priest, your vicar, your minister. The next one is a humanist celebrant. So that's somebody who wouldn't include any kind of religion at all within your ceremony. And that's somebody, as it says there, it says what it is, they don't have any religious beliefs, to the point where if you chose a humanist ceremony to conduct any humanist celebrant to conduct any kind of ceremony, they wouldn't let you to have a prayer, a hymn, anything from the Bible, any religious connotations at all. And these humanist celebrants normally appeal to people who are part of the Humanist UK Society. So when I was becoming a celebrant, when I had the calling to be a celebrant, which I did have, I started to explore, well, how religious was I? It sounds strange, doesn't it? But sometimes you have to go within yourself to understand who you are and what your beliefs are. So I thought, I'm not really that religious. Maybe I would become part of Humanist Society UK and be a humanist type of celebrant. You know, when I was looking for training and guidance within this role. But I looked at it and I felt like it wasn't for me because I wanted to give people choice. My mother was religious, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, and I'd been brought up going to Sunday school. I believe there is something out there that guides us, not necessarily one God, but so I didn't feel, and also I did feel that I do want to I had the strong feeling then that I wanted to give people choice. And I felt like if I was to join a society like this, I was going to be narrowing myself down too much in terms of my own beliefs. So that's why I became an independent celebrant. So that's what I am. An independent civil celebrant. Sometimes I call myself a civil celebrant. And I went to an organisation which did this kind of training for independent celebrants. So I can include religion within my ceremonies. So I don't know, is that enlightening? Did you know these things before?
You've got two without, so.
Got two what? Pardon? With or without? Oh yeah, sorry, two without, sorry. Typo. Hey, just cut that out of the... Yeah, no, you're right. Without or without. Definitely no religion. No, with religion, sorry, yeah. You're right. Okay, so that's a little bit of background on celebrants, what they do. The next thing I thought I'd explain is a little bit about how I came to the role, why I became a celebrant. It's going to be a little bit deep and meaningful, but I'll try to keep it quite light. The first reason was death, she says with a smile. But the reason I became a celebrant is because I was surrounded, I had a year of death going on in my family. I think most of you know, or some of you might know, but both my parents died within 6 months of each other in 2015. My mum within 4 weeks of being diagnosed with cancer, and my dad quite suddenly in hospital later on that year. I wasn't able to have children, so losing my parents was a massive thing for me. In fact, what happened was life lost a lot of meaning. So suddenly I was without kind of, quite a lot of meaning in my life, relationship, my parents. The following February, my very close friend's husband dropped dead at the age of 48, leaving her with 2 teenage girls. So this death thing carried on. At this point, I was in a corporate role. I was an operations manager, working within HSBC buildings across the UK, quite a nice high-flying job, decent salary, company car, going on cruises and foreign holidays, but still life had very little meaning. Everything sort of fell apart. People who've been through grief journeys understand that it can hit you at different times, and you think you're coping okay, then you get into year 2 or year 3 and, all that happens. So, and I found I had very little purpose in life. So I was in my mid-50s, well, early 50s. Not that back 5 years. I was in my very early 50s, and I thought, is this it? Is this it with life? There's going to be more purpose to life. I'm destined to give back to life and find something more rewarding to do. And this is when, and why I actually became a celebrant is because I was left organising 2 completely different funerals. I have got 3 brothers, by the way, but I was left organising 2 funerals. People are nodding when I say that. So the first one was an unplanned funeral. So that was my mother's funeral. She was diagnosed with cancer, died within 4 weeks, didn't want to talk about her funeral, didn't want to talk about what she wanted. We had a bit of an idea. She hadn't really written anything down. It was all very traumatic. She was very ill, and it was all surrounded, take a deep breath, surrounded by quite a lot of trauma and everything else, and that was very kind of unplanned. I did ask her what hymn she wanted. I knew it was probably going to be in the church, and I wish I hadn't, because she chose the Old Rugged Cross, and it's a very dirgy hymn, it's the Old Rugged Cross. So we're singing it, and I'm thinking, I wish I hadn't asked her that, but there we go. So that was that funeral. The next funeral I planned was later on that year, was a very planned funeral. That was my father's funeral. He was slightly more pragmatic. He was an atheist. He'd written down, I've got it here with me, he'd written down exactly what he wanted in a record of personal documents, which were amongst all his paperwork. It was very planned. He'd written exactly what he wanted. Do you want anything religious? Definitely not. It's written there. Definitely not. I'd like Lauren to get up and say some words and how much I've enjoyed my life and not to be sad. I'd like the RAF flag on my coffin. I'd like the RAF fly past. So you can see the difference between planning the 2 funerals was pretty, such a different experience. And it was at that point that I had to then go and find a non-religious person to conduct that funeral, which is where I found Bill, the celebrant. And little did he know how much he was going to change my life. And this is where I got the idea from. I also started helping a couple of my husband's friends' wives plan their funerals and put their eulogies together. So I sort of gradually got pulled into this kind of world. And then having Bill, the celebrant, conduct my father's funeral really kind of started to cement it, really. So I thought I'd just go on and then explain a little bit about some of the myths surrounding funerals and a little bit of education around choices, because I've now been a celebrant for 4 years. I conduct weddings, vow renewals, naming ceremonies, and my funerals, which are my calling, which is my reward, really. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about funerals and just to give you some information around funeral services. So the first sort of question I have for everybody is, do you have to use a funeral director?
I always thought you did.
What does everybody else think? Pardon? No, you don't. No, you don't have to use a funeral director. You can do it all yourself. Quite a large task, yeah? Yeah, maybe you didn't know that you don't have to use a funeral director. People do, because they're the people that you sometimes need, because if a death is unexpected, it's unplanned, and you haven't really thought about things, which a lot of people in this country don't really think about their own funeral or dying, and this is something that I like to talk about quite a lot because how much my dad planning his helped me and my family. So no, you don't have to use a funeral director. Don't get me wrong, I did for my dad's, but having now worked in this industry for the last 4 years, I've come across 2 or 3 families that haven't even gone anywhere near a funeral director. They've done it all themselves. And that's because they've decided on more of a natural burial. Okay, so that's it. So I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of options as well. So, you know, there is no law. There's a very good website called the Good Death Guide, which gives you lots more information on this if you want to explore it later after my talk today. And the Natural Burial Centre as well. They're 2 really good websites. So no, you don't have to go to a funeral director. You can have the body in your house. You can get guidance on how to deal with it. You can then, you keep it in a cold room, whatever you want to do. There's lots of different things you can do. I know people might feel a little bit different emotions around those things, but if that's what you plan to do, you can plan it in a very good way. Your person at the natural burial site could come and pick up your loved one. They put them into their storage unit. You can take your loved one in the back of a car or a van to the natural burial site if you wish to. Yeah? Yeah? I know. Well, it's what's happened for 3, I've conducted 3 ceremonies where this is what happened. So I just thought, it's surprising, isn't it? It's an option and it's something that people don't think about. And lots of different countries and cultures deal with bodies like that as well. You know, we have a system in the UK or British people that were very kind of don't want to talk about it, we're squeamish. As soon as somebody dies, they get taken into by a funeral director or into a hospital, into a morgue or a funeral director's, don't they? So it was just, enlightening just to think about it. Yeah, you don't have to use a funeral director. If you know what you're doing and you plan in advance, you don't have to use a funeral director. And I suppose the biggest thing about that is cost. But anyway, yeah. Can I be buried in my back garden?
That's a good question.
Can I? Would you think that you can? Are you saying no, John?
Do you need planting permission?
You need, yeah, that's right. You can be buried in your own garden. Yeah, you can. Now, there is lots of restrictions on it, and you have to make sure you're not near any drains and size and everything else. Don't get me wrong. You'd have to have quite a big garden to be away from all that kind of stuff. But yes, you can be buried in your own garden, on your own land.
It doesn't help with the resale value.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And there is a lot. And there was that programme on telly, which was really interesting. And I thought it was so educational in terms of grief and dying and everything. What was her name? The actress? Yeah, she was very good in it, wasn't she? Yeah, she was really good in it. So there we go. Yeah, those are for thought, aren't they? You know, just to give you some information. The next... so what options do we really have, apart from being buried in your garden, if you haven't got a garden big enough? So these are all the kinds of different services that I've come across. So the options that you've got are really kind of 2 options. You have a funeral service with your burial or cremation, which is either at a crematorium or a cemetery or a natural burial site. So that's where you go along, which is the normal service that you've probably been to recently by the sound of it, where your loved one's with you in a coffin, you're at the service, you conduct the service, and the person is either buried or cremated there and then. That's your normal kind of service. But I'm a big advocate for telling you about alternatives, because these other kind of services have been different, slightly, what can I say, nicer. Again, they've been planned in advance. It's been about what the person wants. So these kind of services are direct cremation followed by a service or a memorial, which had to happen through COVID, or didn't have to happen, but there was maybe only 6 people there. So the people want to celebrate people's lives and come together to talk about the person generally, don't they? In most cases. So that's where they were able to do that. So you separate the burying or the cremation from the service. kind of thing. And there was a couple of people that have done this one, which is where we have a service held before a direct cremation. So this is where you can be in a barn, you can be in a hotel, you can have the person with you, you can conduct the service, and then you don't necessarily have to be there at the time when they are then taken for the cremation. They can go separately. And that's been, those the two services that I've done on the end one there have been really nice services. They've worked really well. You don't necessarily have to go and sit in a crematorium and see the cremation.
My mum was insistent that nobody went to her cremation.
No, yeah. So you had a totally separate kind of service, yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? And that's because she was planned ahead and she thought about you as a family and because she was miserable. Right, okay. So it's just, you know, I don't know if you thought about any of these options, but it's just food for thought. And the service held before the direct cremation, to let you know, it wasn't held in a hotel. It was held in a funeral director in Hinckley called Sellers, and they're lovely, really lovely company, family company. And with what they've done is they converted one of their buildings into a ceremonial room, which is lovely, which has got like beams in it and everything, with a restaurant kind of cafe joined to it. So yeah, so you've got everything there. It's like
That seems incongruous to us. We have a restaurant.
Yeah, well, that's what they do. They're obviously building a one-stop shop, aren't they, for people? Yeah. So we had the service for this gentleman. He was taken away afterwards, but we had a lovely service for him. Everybody was very relaxed. They'd had a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, went in and conducted the service. Beautiful room. He was with us. And then I said my final words, as I would normally at a cremation or a burial, and he was taken away and cremated separately. His wife of 45 years didn't want to be there at the time when he was cremated. So it's just, so I hope you found it enlightening. It's just to make you realise that people are going for, you know, different options, and there are different things available out there, and you don't need to use a funeral director to be able to plan for your funeral. And that's me. I just thought, probably gone over slightly. Oh, I gave you some natural burial sites in Warwickshire, links there.
When you say natural burial sites,
yeah.
What exactly do you mean?
Okay, so we mean a meadow or a field somewhere, or a woods, as in Greenhaven. I've conducted services in two of those. In Greenhaven, there's a woods in Lillibån, just outside Rugby, where it's a natural burial site. So it means that that's when that gentleman's body was taken direct from the house, put in a cold storage unit at the farm. There's no embalming. We won't get too grisly at this time of the morning, but the body wasn't embalmed or touched in any way. It was wrapped in a shroud. He came and took the body away, and it was put in his cold storage unit at the farm, and we buried him naturally. So it means that there's no metal. Everything has to be biodegradable and in keeping.
A basket?
So it was, he was wrapped in a cloth, which is the shroud, they call a shroud, and he was in a willow coffin, so it couldn't have any metal handles or anything at all. It could be a cardboard biodegradable coffin as well. So you get to choose your own coffin or get somebody to make one for you. But you don't have to be in a coffin. That's another myth. You don't have to be. The body can go straight in the ground. That's another myth. You don't have to be in a coffin to be cremated or buried.
We don't know an awful lot about it.
No, we don't. We don't talk about it, Roger.
People want a coffin because you don't want to see them being put in the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so personal with funerals and burials and this sort of it is so personal because everybody here has got a complete different
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
It's so unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
I'll be making
And it's
that.
so
Yeah.
inevitable, but we don't think about it.
No, I
It's
know.
inevitable.
Yeah. But it's
I don't know what one yet, Helen told me.
so, and then at Temple Fields, there can't be any metal surrounding it. And the other thing, I mean, I'm a real advocate of it, having now conducted quite a few services in natural burial grounds. They're just fantastic. There's no cars, there's no black, There's no pomp, there's no ceremony. There obviously is, because there's a celebrant to kind of lead it and guide it. People turned up in their lycra on their bicycles because he was a cyclist, and the wife wanted him to. Everybody had flowered dresses on. There were lots of natural flowers. There was no plastic. Everything was biodegradable. We went and stood in the woods, and it was peaceful, and it was lovely.
It was a good day.
It was a true celebration of his life. I took my little speaker. There was about 60 people there, but we all just stayed and chatted, and it was very informal. And it didn't have all that kind of pomp and ceremony and the cars and the, you know, it was very, very peaceful. And then the way that your person, you know where your person is either through a wooden plaque, or as in Temple Fields, where I took a friend recently, is a tree. So you buy a nice tree that you want to, and you can choose your tree as well. So that's a nice spot.
I think that's a good thing myself. I think that's a really good idea.
Do you? Yeah, good. Well, there you go. You can explore some of these natural burial sites. Temple Fields is very nice, and Sunrise, it's down past Leamington. That's what I do in a nutshell. It's me as a funeral celebrant. Okay, thank you. And any questions? But I think we've been talking as we've gone along.
So you've got yours planned then?
Have I got mine? Well, I might change it in view of what I've witnessed and what I've experienced over the last couple of years. Yeah, I did have a view, Denise, but it's changing.
My mum left me strict instructions, including that she wanted daffodils, so she was kind enough to dye February when it was daffodils.
Yeah.
Because it struggled in
Yeah.
October or something.
Yeah. And did it help you?
Yes.
Yeah.
In a way, but then there was no flexibility to do what we wanted.
Yeah.
It was, the only disappointment was you could only have 30 people there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was absolutely, it was good in a way, but then there's no freedom to do how you want.
Yeah, and that's what happens, and especially when people are put into a trauma situation or grief, it extenuates these feelings, and they do bubble up. And I think the best thing we can all do for somebody or for our family is to make it known what our wishes are, and it certainly helped me enormously.
Are there many restrictions on where you can spread ashes?
Oh, well, yeah. Yes, there are. Yeah, there are. Yeah, I'm saying that because we took my husband's mum, and she's in the River Conway in North Wales, but I don't think you're supposed to. So we won't talk about that. So we just walked along the quayside with a receptacle and went like that. But you do have to let people know. Yeah, you do. You're supposed to let people know when where you want to spread ashes.
My dad always said he wanted to be cremated, but when it came to it, my mum, we actually had to go. She didn't want to do it because she believed in burial. So you've got to think, because in theory you're not here, so it doesn't matter.
That's the thing, Stu, isn't it? That it's the family dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah.
I found that with both mum and dad, it brought my sister and me closer together. Neither of them had said very much what they wanted, apart from dad saying, don't spit a bush in a coffin, it's just going to go up and smoke. And that was the extent of
He's a practical man then.
Yeah. Yeah.
But actually the fact that we had to spend the next sort of week or two, it gave us a purpose,
Yes.
actually, after they've both gone.
Yeah.
But it just depends, you can't predict, can you?
No.
I found
That's
the hardest part of the memory what to do with the ashes afterwards. I hadn't really considered what to do with that.
And that's why lots of people end up with ashes at home, in bedrooms or wherever.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you.